Okay, let's look at an example. I have three different arrangements here of the same song. Uh, the song is Danny Boy, Irish folk tune that you've probably heard before. So, what we're looking at here is a monophonic texture. Okay, so every note has a rhythm to it, every word in the melody has an accompanimental note. Now, this arrangement is written in SATB setting, so soprano, alto, tenor, bass, SATB. And in only very few occasions will you find the voices moving independently, like here. So on the word side, the soprano is going to hold it. The alto is going to sing side and then move down on the same word and then hold it. And the other two are going to be the same. So the alto has an extra note there. That's okay. It's still a monophonic texture because every note has an accompaniment note. They all move at the same pace. Okay, so that's the texture. The harmonic rhythm is how often the chord changes, and that's probably, I haven't analyzed it yet, but it's probably the same in all three of these arrangements. Because the melody implies a chord, so the chord shifts probably at the same rate. Let's hear this one and give you a sense of monophonic texture. Now, one kind of warning here is that whenever you listen to this kind of a piece with SATB, the synthetic voices of a computer are just awful. And there's no good way to make the computer actually sing. You can't make it sing the words, so you just hear this weird like synthetic ah sound. It's totally bizarre. But let's hear it anyway just to get a sense of the harmony. Okay, and then it repeats. So, homophonic rhythm, the harmonic pace is about, usually I would call this 2 chords per bar. So, in most bars, we hear one chord for the first half of the bar and a second chord in the second half of the bar. There are some exceptions, but that's the majority of the harmonic rhythm throughout this arrangement. It's about 2 chords per bar. Okay, now let's look at another arrangement. This one is for piano and voice, but you can see in the piano, we still have an SATB looking structure. Like, look right here. Right? We still have 4 voice looking things, and we write like this for piano all the time. It's all the same rules that we've been working with. So let's take a listen to this arrangement. Right? So it's not exactly homophonic. It's not extremely far off. Like, let's look right here at the melody. We have a chord here. We have one in between note, and then here's another melody note, another chord, 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 chord. So it's close, but on some of these, we've got a lot more kind of filler notes, right? So it's not exactly homophonic. Now, when I say chord, 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 that doesn't mean we've got a new chord. So that doesn't mean it changes the harmonic rhythm of the piece. The harmonic rhythm just means how often does the chord change, not how often do we use notes within the chords or even some non-chord tones. So it's a bit of a subjective term. But let's hear this one and see what we think. Okay, then it repeats. So here you can hear it's close to homophonic texture, but we've got all these extra filler notes in here. So I would actually probably call this polyphonic texture. It's a bit thick, meaning that there's a lot of notes happening in the accompaniment. Harmonic rhythm is the same to my ear, meaning we have about 2 chords per bar. Some cases we only have 1. Some cases we have a little turn at the end of the chord, or at the end of the bar, like right here. There's another chord slipped in right at the end of the bar. But more or less, I would call this a harmonic rhythm of about 2 chords per bar. And what I want you to get out of this is that what's interesting here is that the texture can totally change depending on your arrangement. You can arrange something in whatever texture you want. That is total creative freedom. The harmonic rhythm, you have some control over, but largely it's dependent on the melody. Because when the melody goes to a note that implies another chord, you kind of have to go there, unless you want to change the melody, right? So a lot of these are going to have the same harmonic rhythm because we're using the same melody, but different texture because they're different arrangements. Let's look at one more. This one looks quite a bit thinner. Like, look down here. We've got, just this kind of little bass line here doing this little accompaniment pattern. It almost looks unfinished, actually, but that's okay. Let's check it out. Okay, so much thinner texture here, right? Less notes happening, just not a lot happening in the accompaniment. And that's totally okay. It's just a thinner texture. It's totally cool. What about the harmonic rhythm? This one is interesting. I still hear it as 2 chords per bar, even though we only get something at the beginning. So we've got 1 chord here, but I can still get a feel of a second chord in the second half of the bar in most places. So the melody by itself is implying this second chord, even though the accompaniment isn't doing it at all. So we can still hear that chord come out. I can, at least. So again, this harmonic rhythm idea is a little subjective. But I think I still hear it just using the melody alone. Maybe it's only because I've just heard two other arrangements where we did hear it much more clearly. So it's in my head. So maybe it's not fair to say that, but I think it is. I think even if I just jumped into this one by itself, I'd still hear that second chord per measure. So harmonic rhythm, still two chords per measure, but totally different texture. Cool. Okay, let's move on to some wrap-up things.